present. Our kind and loving Father in heaven, we are so thankful once again we can come before you and study thy word. We pray that as we share these stories, thy word together, that we will be inspired. We would trust you more and rely on you to guide us in our life. In Christ's name we prayed. Amen. This morning, I'd like to share with you the concept of what will be your decision. So that is a question, I suppose, rather than just a concept. In life, we are faced with many decisions. We're faced with many decisions. Some decisions are simple, other decisions are complex. Like this little boy looking at the apple and the creamy sweet cake. That's a difficult decision for him, I presume, but probably not so much for any one of you. So some decisions are easy to make, others are harder to make. Some decisions are important because they would affect the rest of your life. So it is best if we spend more time to think about it before we make that decision. Other decisions are not so important. You can make it, doesn't matter which way you go. So as you come to the church, if you walk towards the left or walk towards the right, you can still get into the church, no problem, right? So that is not a big decision. So those decisions, you don't have to spend so much time to figure it out. So the key point in life is to recognize which decisions are important and which decisions are not so important. So we don't want to spend most of the time on the unimportant decisions and did not spend enough time on the important decisions. Now this morning I'd like to share with you a story. Now some of you may have heard it, but this is the story of Dr. Manjay Al Mudaris. Manjay Al Mudaris. Anyone heard of this name before? A few years ago, it became a very popular news in the news. But let's talk about this. For over 5 hours, this young doctor was hiding in the toilet cubicle. Not in a man's place, but in a women's locker room. Why? Why? He was breathing softly, doesn't dare to make any noise, in case anyone discovered him. He was wiping his forehead where he was sweating. He was scared. He was scared that he's going to be discovered by someone. If anyone found him, most likely he will be led away, get shot. He was in great fear. Now and then there are 2 or 3 nurses would enter from the adjoining operating theater and come in and wash up. He can hear the water flowing. He can hear the people washing their hands, washing their arms, scrubbing. You can hear them panic. They were talking with hushed tones, betraying that they must have been doing something terrible. They probably doing something terrible to the young men who were lying on the operating theater table right next door. The young doctor felt nauseated. He actually can smell the smell of blood. He imagined those bloody scenes in that operating room right next door. Luckily, no one noticed that last cubicle in that locker room, in that ladies' locker room, was permanently turned to red, meaning that it's occupied. No one bothered to check. People just thought that someone was in there. So he was able to sit there and hide. For how long? 5 hours. 5 hours. 5 hours ago, that morning, that very morning, in late October 1999, Dr. Munjay Al-Mudaris has completed his morning round in the Baghdad Saddam Hussein Medical Center. That was around 8:30 a.m. Then a group of Iraqi Republican guards came with 3 busloads of young men. Who are they? They were army deserters. They were draft dodgers. They stopped right in front of the army. The Republican Guard let them out and demanded the surgeon, the doctor, to stop whatever they are doing currently and have to operate on this group of young men. 3 busloads of young men. Remember, these young men were army deserters. Okay? So the commander demanded that. Look, doctor, you have to amputate part of the ear of these young men so that they will have a permanent mark of shame to show that they were army deserters. So they demanded them to operate on these young people, to shame them so that they will be permanently disfigured, and anyone in the street saw them will recognize these are army deserters, because Saddam Hussein was fighting a war, right? He wanted to get as many soldiers as he can. He forced conscript the young men into the army. Many of them doesn't want to. Well, the head of surgery loudly protested. He cited the Hippocratic Oath. Now, every doctor would swear to this Hippocratic Oath, which say that they would not kill anyone, they would not harm anyone, they would do not do anything that will be against the interest of their patient, right? That's the hope that they have to take before they got their medical degree. So the head of surgery said, no, we can't do that. We can't purposely cut someone, cut their ear. There's nothing wrong with them. They don't need the surgery. Do you think the commander of the Republican Guard listened to him? No. He just pulled the head surgeon, take it out to the car park. Thank you. Thank you. You can sure that the Republican Guard would not give them water to drink like this kind of brother here. Took him out to the garage. The next thing this young doctor heard was a single gunshot. They knew what happened. And the commander of the Republican Guard come back and facing all the anesthetists, all the surgical nurses, surgical staff, all the other surgeons, other doctors, and say, any of you share his view? Come forward, I'll take you out. So Munjay looked around. The face of all his colleagues, they were filled with terror, because they knew at that moment they are faced with a very important decision, probably the most important decision in life. As Dr. Munjay recall, I was confronted with the decision. Would I obey the command and live with guilt for the rest of my life? Or would I refuse and end up with a bullet in my head? What would you do, brothers and sisters? What would you do in that situation? And he thought, I must run. I must run away. I must run away. So while everyone was distracted, he slipped behind the crowd into the woman's locker. That's where we started out, remember? And then went into the cubicle, locked the door. And he sat there for 5 hours. Doesn't dare to make a noise. Every time when someone come in and wash their hand or do whatever it is, he got so scared, he doesn't even dare to breathe loudly. Luckily, as I said, no one noticed that particular locker is permanently red. And no one even noticed it. Well, it is now about 2 p.m. That's the daily closing time for surgery. So, theater usually close early because after the patient had the surgery, they would need to look after them for a little while, so they would finish it early. So he waited there for the last group of women to enter the change room and then wash up, to clean up their ghastly handiwork. He waited for another 15 minutes after the last one left. So he quietly slipped out of the cubicle, walked out of the locker room. Luckily, no one was around. The place was quiet. But he dare not run, because if you run, you will attract attention, right? So he walked slowly, as though that nothing happened. Try to look as calm as possible. He walked past the car park where he had his own car, which is a Mercedes. He was quite a rich doctor, right? But he did not pick it up because in case the military intelligence already found out that he was missing and started to track on him. So he headed straight to the taxi stand and asked the taxi to take him to the edge of the township in Baghdad, where one of his trusted friendly friend was. He did not dare to go home. Why? It could happen that someone from the military have already called the mother and asked, where's your son? He did not know for sure, but he didn't tie the chair. So he went straight to his friend's home at the edge of town and wondered what to do next. He was now a fugitive. He's now a fugitive. After he managed to contact the mother and let her know that he is safe, the advice to him was, go to Lebanon. So he took the first opportunity and go from Iraq to Baghdad to Lebanon. Of course, at that time, there's a lot of refugees, during the war. And as an Iraqi, the only country would let him in to stay for 14 days for no visa is Malaysia, because it's also Islam country, Muslim country. Well, obviously the choice. He need to leave Middle East, and Malaysia is the next destination. So he flew out as soon as he can get a ticket to Kuala Lumpur, to Malaysia. He can stay for 14 days, but he wastes no time. In there, he find out how he can find someone to get him somewhere else. So he was introduced to a people smuggler. This people smuggler operates from Indonesia. So Indonesia will be his next destination. So he met up with the smuggler. So let me show you in this diagram where he's from. Now notice that he was from here, Iraq, go to Lebanon, flew to Malaysia, and the next destination is go down to Indonesia, right? That's his route. Now he met this smuggler who will promise to get him to Australia. Of course, most people from Indonesia at that time, anyway, like to come to Australia. Well, he didn't particularly want to come to Australia, but that's the only known route that he can find to go. So the people smuggler extracted a large sum of money and took his passport. Well, he said, "Can I really trust you?" He asked the guy. "You took my money and took my passport. What happened if you don't get me there?" And the people smuggler was really, really annoyed. He said, "I'm the best people smuggler in the world. You don't trust me? You have to trust me. I'm always successful in smuggling people." So he was proud of being a people smuggler. So he had no choice. He gave him his money, he gave him his passport. So the next thing, as I say that, he went to Indonesia near Jakarta somewhere. I'm not sure exactly which port, probably you can tell me where did he usually go. Well, after you go to Indonesia, and if you want to head to Australia, where would you go? Christmas Island, yeah. Okay, so the people smuggler told him that 3 days' time, I found you this boat. This boat will take you to Australia. Well, they all crammed into a boat. Now, here is Indonesia. Christmas Island is there. Christmas Island actually closer to Indonesia than close to Australia, all right? Even though it belonged to us. Okay? Oh, let me go back. So, first we'll go there. But once you reach Christmas Island, there's a processing center. You'll be processed. We'll consider you as a refugee, all right? At that time, in the early 2000s, or late 1999. He went there. Well, they all crammed into a small boat. Now, this is not the boat because I don't think he would have the luxury taking photos at that point of time. I just grabbed some stock photo from the internet and just put it there to illustrate the point. And 150 people, mostly Iraqis, and some Indonesians, some Malaysians, and all these things, are crammed into this boat. They are looking to go to Australia. Only about 10 or 15 kilometers out of sea, the captain of the boat bailed out, jump into the water. Just let them alone. How would you like that? But he at least has some conscience. Before he jumped the boat, he told them, you keep heading southeast, all right? In a few more hours, you will hit Christmas Island. But if you're unlucky and miss Christmas Island, and then you have saved a few more days, probably weeks, then you will hit a land with kangaroo. That's where you want to go, jump offshore. But if you miss that, and then find yourself in the barren land with penguins, you've gone too far. You're probably in South Pole. Well, they knew that. Now, luckily for them, let me go back, they hit Christmas Island. So they landed in Christmas Island, and he was treated very well at the processing center there. And he recalled that the officer, the immigration officer, actually lent him his satellite phone, I should say, not cell phone, satellite phone, to allow him to call his mother so that the mother would know that he's safe. And that's the last time he spoke to the mother for the next few years. The mother was still in Baghdad, okay? So he had a very good first impression of Australia. But the next stop is not so good. So they were then flown to the Curtin Detention Center. You probably know that. That detention center is now closed. I believe there was some problem with that. Right, it had to close. And he described his experience there. It's like hell on earth. It's like hell on earth. Well, here is a picture of Dr. Mujib al-Mudaris. I'll talk about the picture a bit later on. Let's tell you his experience in the detention center. Because he got good English skill, got good language skill, in the detention center they were not treated very nicely. They were not treated very nicely. The place to sleep was terrible, hot, nighttime's cold, mosquitoes all around them, and you know how Australia flies mosquitoes everywhere, even though you're in the Kimberley. Not very comfortable. They were not treated very humanely. So he saw that his fellow detainees were being ill-treated because he can speak English, so he spoke out, interpret for them, and complained to the management. As a result, he was labeled the troublemaker. All right? Mujib was labeled the troublemaker. What did they do to him? They put him to jail. He said that, I couldn't be happier because jail is better. The Western Australia jail is better than the detention center. He was given a number, 982. So for 10 months, he was not known as Mujib al-Mudaris. He's known as 982. Has no identity, no name, no nothing. Well, 10 months passed. That was actually on the eve of the 2000 Olympic that was to be held in Australia. He was relieved. He was recognized as a refugee. So he hopped onto the bus and get into civilization. Now, let me just step back a bit. When he was in the detention center, got thrown into jail, which is a nicer place than the detention center, he got nothing to do in jail. So he took the book that he carried with him, which is an anatomy book. So he read it from the front page to the last page. He read it many times because he got nothing else to do. He kept reading it. So he knew his anatomy very well by the time he finished the jail. So when he came out of the detention center, was sent to the city, the first thing he tried to do was to try to sit the medical exam and got registration in Australia. And what do you think he did? His anatomy score was the top in the whole batch. He passed it the first go because he knows his anatomy so well, okay, that he become immediately recognized, and he was, I think the first job he got was in Mandurah Hospital in Victoria, okay. After 1 year, he went to Austin Hospital in Melbourne. And he was able to pursue one of his dreams. He's become an orthopedic surgeon. In fact, he's one of the top orthopedic surgeon in Australia. Not only that, he's the top orthopedic surgeon in the world. He's only 40. He was born in 1972. What's that? 48? 47? 48? Around that. Now, what is so special about him? When he was 14, he recalled, he saw the movie Terminator. And in Terminator, those of you who heard about him or watched it, know that there is a half man, half machine, right? And they can control the machine arm at will by your own brain. And that stuck in his mind. He said, when I grew up, I'm going to help people to develop a machine that can extend their capability if they lost their limb. And that's what he did. Now you see the picture behind him. Those are the legs, and these are the mechanical prosthetics, right? We all understand ordinary prosthetics. It's very awkward. They are limited mobility. But what he did was, let's look at the next slide, and this patient's name is Michael Grant. There's another Michael Bain from the British Army, was his first patient. What he did was, he had a prosthetics here, the mechanical leg. He put an implant inside the upper leg, all right, the torso, and connected up with a titanium plate to the nervous system. So you can actually control the movement, send electrical signals, okay, through this, and command the movement, command the movement of the mechanical part. So you can see this guy here actually is controlling his step so he can walk. He can walk. After a while, of course, they require some sort of training because the thought process that you use to control your own leg is different from the type of thought process that you have to control the mechanical leg. Okay? So the innovation that he has is how you integrate the robotic motion with your body electrical signals. And that is called osseointegration. All right? You integrate the robotic side with our real body. He said that one of the things that gave him the most satisfaction was to see the first patient he held. His name was Michael Bain, a British soldier who lost both his legs in the Iraq War. And he accompanied this patient. He put his prosthetic leg there, went home. As he walked toward his home, his wife, the soldier's wife that is, and the children were in the kitchen window looking out, seeing the father walk toward them. And the mother tells the son, who's about 5 years old, "See, your father walking towards us." And the son replied, "No, that cannot be my father. He cannot walk." He wouldn't believe that he was able to walk again. And Dr. Munjay said, that was the moment that changed my life. That was the moment that changed my life. If you're interested, he actually wrote a book called Walking Free. So it actually has two meanings in this. The fact that he walked free from Iraq, and that the fact that he's now helping people to walk freely. Okay? So it's very interesting book. If you're interested, you can come to me. I can share some of those thoughts with you. Well, Though very impressive, my purpose this morning is not to tell you or to inform you about Dr. Madera's achievement. He's certainly one of the top leading surgeons in the world. But the question I want each of us to focus on is, what was the decision that made him and led him to his success? That led him to be a blessing to the rest of the world. If he had chosen the other path, like the rest of the doctor, like the rest of the surgical staff, to help amputate those deserters, what would happen? If he was so afraid that he gave in to the order of the Republican Guard, what will happen? The question that we need to ask ourselves is, how can we ensure that the decision you and I make are good ones? How do I do it? Can a person suddenly make a good decision out of nowhere? Can the right decision be made without preparation, without clear thinking? Can a person who has habitually made the wrong choice suddenly be able to make the right decision? Now, these are some of the questions that we need to think. But I think Christ probably answered that in Matthew 25, in an unexpected place. Matthew 25 is the parable of the talents, right? You remember what did the master said to the person with the 5 talents and the person with the 2 talents? Actually, the same thing. Verse 21. His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servants. You were faithful over a what? Few things. I will make you ruler of many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." The same, verse 23. This time to the one with the 2 talents. His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." The reward for both are the same. In other words, Christ is saying that if you are faithful on few things, if you are faithful on the small things, if you are faithful on the unimportance, you will be able to be faithful even in the most important. Good decision making needs to be cultivated. Roy Disney said, "It is not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are." In other words, if we hold the right value system, if we believe on our values, we will be able to make the right decision. Value and habit are developed over a long period of time that will enable us to make the right decision. In the Bible, you probably remember Esther, Queen Esther. Queen Esther had to make a decision. In Esther chapter 4, you remember Haman was plotting to kill all the Jews because Mordecai won't bow down to him, right? He's very clever. He knows that the king loves money. So he said that if you allow me to kill all the Jews, I will put a lot of money into your treasury. Well, which king doesn't like that, to have many money, right? So he got the king to give an order to eliminate all the Jews. And Mordecai was fearful, was trembling. He asked Queen Esther for help. How did Esther reply him? Do you remember? She said, according to the law of Media Persia, if the king did not ask you to see him, all right, and you went to see him yourself, you could be killed if he does not hold out his scepter to you, right? So the queen was scared. Said that, what? I haven't seen the king for weeks. And if the king was displeased with me and he would not hold out his scepter to me, then I would be killed. So Esther was faced with a very difficult decision. Either he have to save her, or she have to save her own life, or she have to risk her own life to save her fellow Jews. What should she do? How should she decide? Esther prayed. Not only she prayed, she asked her maid to pray with her as well. All right? So at that point of time, in Esther chapter 4, verse 13 and 14, so let us read that. And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, do not think that in your heart that you will escape the king's palace any more than the other Jews. Even though you are in the king's palace, you may not escape the fact. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. So Mordecai was saying that if you don't help, God would use other means to help us. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time? Now in King James Version it says, who knows you are here for such a time. For such a time. Brothers and sisters, when we face decisions, when we face difficult decisions, think about it. Is it God who put you there? He wants to make sure that you reach the right decision. Make sure you make the right decision. So how did Queen Esther prepare for her decision? He prayed. He asked her maidservant to pray. She prayed. She asked her maidservant to pray. Maidservants to pray. She remembered her true value. She remembered her true value. The rest of the story you probably know. Esther went in to see the king, and the king extended the scepter to her. So she was welcome. And she asked the king to join into banquet. And she's a very good psychologist. You know that the best way to get into a man's heart is through what? Through good food. And it always worked. And it worked in this case. And he didn't give him one meal, he gave her three meals. And you know the rest of the story, so I don't need to repeat that. But the point that I'm making here is Esther here was faced with a similar decision that, like Dr. Manji has said, either your own life or the life of someone else. Brothers and sisters, are you willing to risk your own life? Are you willing to hand your own life to God, even though the decision is so difficult? What lesson can be learned? When we face with difficult decisions, we need to pray. We need to pray for divine guidance. We need to pray that God would lead us to do the right thing. We need to remember our principle, the principle that we learn from the Bible, the principle that we learn from our faith. In church, in sermon times, in Sabbath school time, as we discuss biblical texts. Those basic principles are one that need to guide our decision. And once we make our decisions, add on your decisions. May God bless you. Amen.